It's difficult to overstate how important some of the work you've been doing looking into this is. And I think because so many of us are worried, we've got this social stigma around us, this sort of tribal thing that keeps us in line, and there's mostly a good thing so that we don't go out and be racist when we shouldn't. And we're constantly saying to ourselves, and people say to me when I raise the issue of mass immigration, well, come on, you're being a racist because no stats bear any of this out. And there is concern around numbers. It's huge numbers. So of course there will be individuals who commit crimes, but does it mean that you're actually any more likely to be abused or attacked by somebody from another country or whatever? And you've actually gone and found the stats in other countries where they record it.
Yeah.
Are you concerned with people calling you a racist?
No, because that's just a ridiculous label, and I know I'm not. It's that simple. A bit of background on my own adult life. After graduating university, I went to work in India and worked on a broadsheet newspaper there called The Hindu. I then went to live and work in China. After that, I went to live and work in Ghana. I used to live in the Muslim neighborhood in Ghana. Ghana is a fascinating country because it's both very Christian and very Muslim, and they rub along brilliantly. They have no social tension between the two religions. I have then subsequently gone on to spend time in Cameroon. I had a former partner who was half Algerian, half Cameroonian. And then back in 2017, I lived and worked in Kenya for a whole year. Again, it's a very mixed population in Kenya. You've got as many Muslims as you might do Christians. A lot of their tensions there tend to be on tribal grounds, not religious grounds. So am I a racist? That's a funny looking racist by anybody's standards. Am I a realist? Yes. Do I think that when you're doing important work and trying to break taboos that, you're going to have people who are worried about what you're saying, who are uncomfortable about what you're saying, who go as far as attacking you? Well, of course they're going to. Should that stop somebody from doing what they know to be right and what they know to be important? No.
I was reading, I can't remember what it's called. There's a fantastic essay that a guy called Chris Ryan sent me from 2004. Someone wrote about taboos and how they change with time. And he talked about, imagine, say, a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old woman who's gone and lived in all these different countries and had a really interesting life, and then goes back to meet a 15-year-old girl and the different taboos that they would have, because the 15-year-old, most things that the 30-year-old would come back and say would be offensive to the 15-year-old who's only ever just been at their school, had their little sort of life, and they imagine that the whole world works just like theirs does. I'm really interested to hear that you've had not just some experience, but a hell of a lot of experience.
Well, what's fascinating actually is when you go and live in these countries, they don't have this ridiculous straitjacket of taboo, which by and large is now being deployed in the West as luxury ideology.
Well, they have other taboos, though, don't they?
They have other taboos, but I think they're far more direct and open in talking about things as societies.
You could, in a Muslim society, you couldn't, make an image of the Prophet Muhammad.
Right. Okay. So they have other cultural mores and normatives for sure. And actually, we're very good, I think, as Brits, by and large, not always, but certainly when I go to Morocco a lot. It's one of my favorite countries. I don't walk about it, even if it's 40 degrees. I'm not walking around in a vest top and a short skirt. I'm covering myself up for two reasons. One, it's not what they do there. So it'd be very disrespectful to them. But number two, I'm going to be getting a lot of backlash if I do that and unwanted attention. So that's common sense. The problem that we have at the moment is we have nations, but we don't have nation states. People are increasingly able to come from country A, go and live in country B. And because we live in a completely interconnected world with the internet, they can come and live in the UK as an economic unit, but they can stay completely assimilated and in touch with their previous life back at home. They can follow only news from, say, Pakistan. Within their family unit, their friendship group and their mosque only speak in Urdu or something. They can be in the United Kingdom, setting up a family here, getting money from the state, and having absolutely nothing to do with the country in which they live. And this is a problem. That is a mass failure of integration. And no entity that needs to share resources and living space will survive having that level of fragmentation. No, it's human nature. It's tribal. There's been failed experiments of this kind around the world. Very often the finger of blame is pointed at the British for what we did in the colonial era. One of the things we did was draw arbitrary borders and invented countries, bringing together a disparity of tribes with different languages. And some of those countries are still fraught with intertribal warfare today. So we know this doesn't work. And yet we're pretending that this can work back here somehow, that somehow we're going to get this right without even putting in the effort to try and address these problems.
Have we not always, to an extent, had these issues that maybe the Jews would be in a bit of a Jewish community, the Greeks would be in another, the Hindus would be over there?
Yeah, we've always had a degree of sort of community segregation for sure, but I think there's almost like a Hooke's law principle of elasticity and how far that can stretch. I think the problems come about not so much in the segregation of a community within themselves who might keep themselves to themselves. We've got long established Chinese communities in this country. You go to Chinatowns and I don't think anybody's ever had a problem with there being a Chinatown because they don't tend to dislike the values of the native population. We have a problem when it comes to certain communities who have a very different and sometimes orthodox opinion of how culture should work, which is in direct friction with the way we do things here. And that is when you end up with big problems.
I like what you say about elasticity. There has to be a point. I had a debate with quite a woke friend of mine the other day who's not actually from the UK. And so we had this sort of big debate and, it got quite heated as they always do. And then we were fine after. But I started saying, immigration, it does seem to be mass immigration that may be at the point where it is too much too soon. And he was interrupting me before I even finished the sentence to say, immigration's good, it's done this, it's done that, I'm very much for immigration. And I said, well, you're not, that doesn't even make sense. I'm for immigration. To what point? What if 1 billion people were coming into England this year? Would that be okay? So, well, obviously not. So I was like, right, so you're not just for immigration. There has to be a point. And where we're disagreeing is where that point is. Everyone agrees that there has to be a point.
It's not so much that we're disagreeing about it, it's we're not allowed to have that conversation.
Yeah.
That is where we have a problem. And governments know this because almost every political party has basically said in manifestos for the past 20 years, we're going to lower the rate of immigration down to the tens of thousands. So they know. And yet they're not doing it.
Yeah.